Welcome to the Pricing for Photographers show. It is good to be here with you. Sorry for the little glitch. I hope we get the people back who were here before. But in this show, we're talking about, as the main focus, hourly pricing. But I have something I want to talk with you about as we get into the show about broadening the spectrum of this show, because a lot of your questions, and I have a lot of questions this week, and they range from pricing of photography all the way through just good business questions. Thanks, Todd. Thanks for letting me know before. And I'm not sure why the audio cut out before or didn't work, but it's worked the same way before. But let's keep right into the show. And of course, those of you who are catching us on the replay, welcome. Please put your questions in the comments below. And everybody who comes in live, feel free to put your questions in the chat box, and I'm happy to answer them as I work through the different questions. But the question this week has to do with working hourly and how you might approach this. And some people are just saying, look, I'm all about day rates, and that's fine. And quite honestly, clients like day rates because they can compare apples to apples a lot easier. But as many of you know who followed me for a number of years, know that honestly, I like per image pricing, except for when it comes to events. Events, I'm good with hourly. You can't, be overly productive. You got to be there. You're captive. So have a good hourly rate. And how you figure that out, again, of course, is always figuring out your cost of doing business and working from there. I have a good question coming up about dealing with people who are a lot lower in pricing. And I want to get to that question in a few minutes because I think it really is important. Among the other questions, like I said, I have a number of good questions that people have asked. And those of you who wish to ask me questions at Rosh Sillars on Twitter is great. Or, of course, right here on YouTube, you can ask the questions. I'm thinking about broadening this out a little more. Now that we have over 400 subscribers, to just say, look, this is the business of photography. We focused on pricing. I may continue to do that, obviously as a core element, because I think it's an important part of the whole conversation. But I get so many questions on the business in general. And so I just want your opinions. How should we go? Should I keep the focus on pricing and all the elements around that? Or should I just generally say, look, pricing for photography show, we'll do this noon on Fridays, and then I'll do my individual videos, maybe a pop-up live once in a while or a focus video on different aspects of the business of photography. So I'm always looking for your insight. Once in a while, I can certainly talk about marketing, which is something I have a show on Mondays on my other channel. That's what I talk about, marketing, social media. So I won't mix it up too much, but sometimes there are ideas that are really focused on the photography field. So, just to wrap up the initial question, should you work hourly? Here's the thing. You can't scale. You can't scale yourself hourly. So when you work per image or per project, that's fine. I mean, when I say per image, I'm either per image or per project, but you can scale that better than you can scale hourly. And you want to make sure that everything is covered. So that's really my answer is don't, if you can't, if you can avoid that, if you can work out a pricing package in which you are comfortable with. And that is the key more than anything. How comfortable are you? Can you sell it? I mean, I've run into a number of people, photographers through the years, very competent photographers, can't sell per image pricing. And I do great with it because I guess I have that enthusiasm about it. I see the benefits to both sides, and I can share that concept with people. If you've ever been in sales, you know that when you're happy and you can really just have confidence in what you're talking about, you do much better at sales than when you don't. And it's just a natural thing. It transfers to people. So if you have trouble convincing people, and that's what's happened with a number of people who've tried to go the per image pricing, say, well, explain this to me. And by the time they were done telling me, I wouldn't have gone for per image pricing. I mean, it really was, there's no confidence behind that. And I didn't understand why I would benefit from such a pricing structure. And of course, one of the big things, of course, is that the photographer's held accountable. I mean, I got to do a good job. If you're going to buy all the prints, images, I have to do a good job. Otherwise, you have a way out. And that's the way I set it up. I don't think everybody has to set it up that way. That's just my angle with the low risk photographer. Okay, questions. So the first question and the question and answer is, what percentage of my budget should go towards marketing? That's an excellent question. If you're in the advertising business, they're instantly going to say 10%, 10%. But 5%, somewhere between 5 and 10% is a good number. I often recommend shoot for 10% if you can, more if you can, as long as you're getting a positive ROI on the marketing efforts. Now, you have to test stuff and you're going to lose out. And I think a lot of times people test something with a small amount of money, don't get an immediate return, and think, oh, that doesn't work. You have to remember, sometimes you have to actually spend a certain amount of money to see that return. So let's say you do $2,500 wedding and you spend $100 to see, some kind of, I won't even name a type, just some type of online advertising. You check it out, $100, and you get 20 people to click on that ad. That may be, those 20 people for $100 may not be enough. You may need to get 100 people to click on that ad before you actually get a return. And so a lot of times some people get lucky, some people don't. They put in $50 to see if it works. It's just wasting money. You really do need to have a commitment and really figure out just kind of figure out, okay, I need so many leads and so many leads to close for this at this certain price for me to make a profit, and kind of backwards engineer everything so you know actually how many clicks you need to your website, and out of how many clicks, how many people actually ask for information and how many people actually close. You really do have to do that math. And if you do that, then you'll start to realize, oh, it probably wasn't $100, probably $500 or $1,000 before I get that lead. And usually between $250 and $500 is pretty good. In terms of a product that will work with pay-per-click, for example. But there are other types of advertising where it's not quite as expensive and it doesn't take as much for a good positive ROI. Again, you just got to do the math. But as far as your overall budget, 6, 7, 8, 10%, great way to go. Okay, how much of my core cost should be part of my income? Oh, I get it. So you have your fixed costs. So rather than core, fixed costs, how much of that should be like your overall gross income for your business? 20%, 25%, 33%, I think should be the max. I like to have, when I've talked about this on other shows, I like to have at least a 33 to 50% profit. In other words, that's the money that I make at the company at the end of the year. 33% is considered reasonable. If you're knocking it down to 20%, especially in the photography field, you're not doing something right. You really need to have much more profit when it comes to that. So as far as this question goes, maybe aim for that studio cost and insurance and all that should not be more than 25, 30% at the high end of your gross. Okay, so the next question, do I need a business plan? I would suggest you do, just to kind of lay out the land, especially if you're starting, but even every year, just kind of updating a plan, or at least have an outline of a plan of what are you going to do? What are your goals? What's your focus? What's the competition like? Although this is going to contradict what my answers to the next topic is, but understanding the landscape of photography for your area. What types of photography are you working on? Are you going to expand that? Are there other services that you can combine with your photography to make your business more profitable? And really just examining the company. How much are you spending in fixed expenses? I mean, some people don't even know. I mean, a lot of times business people, it's not just photographers, business people do not know how much is really coming in the checking account, and they don't know how much is going out of the checking account. That information is very helpful to understand if you're a profitable company or not. And so just getting a handle on these things, again, understanding the landscape, setting goals, and how you're going to be profitable, what types of work that you do, how much you charge. In other words, recreate that pricing list that's so helpful that you can keep on your desktop. So when people ask you something about pricing, you don't just do something off the top of your head and then underbid, because we often naturally do that. You can actually just click on a piece of paper and figure it out and go from there. Okay, so the next question is, how do I deal with newbies to photography? They're undercutting me. And my best answer to that is don't. Don't worry about them. Don't think you say, well, wait a minute, they're hurting my business. Look, if you try to fight it, if you try to match them or beat them or do something, you're going to lose. One, you're going to waste your time rather than focusing on your target market that can't afford you. And two, you're not going to win the game. There's always this rotation of new people coming into photography, and they're going out of photography, many of them just as quickly because they're undercutting and they realize they can't. Because a lot of times people will do photography part-time, which is fine, and they have a certain price. It's like, wow, I have a full-time job or a part-time job. I don't need the money. I don't have much overhead. And hey, I can do this for $50. And they said, wow, if few people are giving me $50 here, $50 there, I should really just become a photographer. I love photography. And then they get out into the marketplace and realize, okay, so they got a few people who pay them $50, but how many of those people who will pay them $50 do they need to make a living? And then they find out, wow, it takes a lot of effort to get a lot of people, no matter the price. As a photographer, there's a lot of competition. And so then they go out of business. But meanwhile, the photographer who is charging hundreds, if not thousands of dollars is, their hair is gone, because they're dealing with this. You just have to focus on your target market, ignore them, don't worry about them. You have one competitor in your photography business. That is you. That is the only competitor. Continue to improve what you're doing. Continue to do, better at finding your target market, developing your brand. The only difference between a photographer who's charging, $100 an hour and a photographer who's charging $5,000 an hour is the brand that they put into the marketplace and targeting the right people who are willing to pay that. And there are people who pay much more than that. So that's the deal. And now, obviously, it's harder. I'm not saying any of this is easy. Never will. Always will acknowledge, hey, I'm in the business. I get it. It's not easy, but I've seen all these elements work. I've been a photography student coming out of college, with a fresh minted degree, all the way through a seasoned veteran of 30 years, having worked with some of the biggest corporations and agencies in the world. And I've seen all those different parts along the way, and I get what it's about, and you can have an intelligent conversation. And I understand that when I focus on everyone else, I'm not focusing on what's important, and that's developing my own business. Okay, let's see. Where can we get money to start a photography business? Interesting question. Honestly, you're going to have a tough time, from banks and things like that, because of the competition level. You can't just go in with your portfolio and say, hey, I want to be a photographer. Can you give me some money? Now, it doesn't mean some photographers haven't put together really good business plans, and that's what you would certainly need. You should have an angle. You need to show how you would get that income. But banks probably would not give you a loan to start your photography business. If you're well established and you show receipts coming in and you need some new equipment, you could possibly get a line of credit as an established business, but to start a business, no. So from there, you're really going to have to depend on family and friends and still put that business plan together and show them your portfolio there and show them, where you feel you can get the work or where you've gotten work and how you're going to pay them back. That is the number one thing. If you can show them and have a plan on how they get their money back and is there any interest around that, that is what you need to do. And that will be very helpful, because if you just go in the mindset, hey, I just want people to give me money and I really have no plan to give it back to them, you can hurt especially good family and friend relationships. So that's really dangerous. So you have to be careful about that. Okay. Let's see. The next question. What is the most important skill to have in running a business, photography business? Well, I think business. I've often said after I graduated from photography school, art school, people ask me, would you want to teach? And I did teach at the university level for many years. I taught photojournalism and digital photography. But going back to the school that I went to, I often would say, you know what? I only want to go back there to teach business. And that's because people who understand business well enough and it can apply that to the photography, they're the ones that are going to continue to be a photographer for a long time, despite the level of skill. I mean, we've all been in those situations where we say, wow, that photographer is doing great and they're known for doing very well. And what do they bring to the table? Their portfolio is average or, at best. I mean, I can do better than this. Or, you start to nitpick and then you roll that around your brain. How come? Because they have business skills. They know how to market. And they have the ability to run a business. It doesn't matter what kind of business it is. I mean, photography is right after restaurant business in terms of really how hard it is to keep the business going. So if you can run a photography business successfully, you probably run just about any business out there. So it's not an easy business to get into. Well, no, it's a real easy business to get into, but it's a much harder business to stay in. And so business skills and people skills are really important, especially if you're a family style photographer, a wedding photographer, senior photographer. Good people skills are really helpful because you're dependent on those referrals to really grow your business. Okay, I have no money. Where do I start with my marketing? Common question, common theme. I have no money. Oh, you must be a photographer. No, I'm sorry. It's a common question, and I get that a lot from photographers because a lot of photographers, especially in the beginning, they love photography, but they want to grow, and there's not a lot of extra capital to grow that business. And so, I certainly would remember the whole idea of, awareness, traffic, conversions, and retention. That's a good place to start. Develop a plan for awareness, traffic, driving traffic to your website or blog, conversions, improving conversions, and retention. And the one area that affects all four of those areas of different type of marketing is social media. Social media, you can develop awareness for your brand in social media. You can drive traffic to your website and blog through social media. You can improve conversions. How do you do that? Okay, I will get to that question in a second, Todd. So to improve conversions, is getting to know you and people getting to know you in social media. You buy from people that you know, like, and trust. That's the traditional statement that people make. And so if people know you, it's a lot easier to buy from you. And so that social element can really help. And then, of course, retention, staying top of mind, keeping in communication with people. And communication is truly a important part of the retention and getting referrals. Okay, here's Todd's question. I'm not sure why someone needs money to start a photography business. If you don't already have a camera and gear, you probably shouldn't be going into the business. What other expenses do you have? Well, traditionally it's all the expenses any other business has. And I think a lot of photographers get into the business and they think, oh, I have no overhead. That's why a lot of them charge low amount of money. But here's the thing. You have to update your camera, and they may have a basic camera. I don't know. Who knows the situation? But you're going to have to update your camera. You're going to have to update your computer. You need the software to do this. We're talking thousands of dollars right there. If you do it right and you're really in business, maybe you have a studio. Maybe you don't. That's fine. Or maybe it's an office. A lot of people work out of their home, which is fine. But you have insurance, liability insurance, health insurance, and all of the. Then on top of all that, and marketing, we said 10% of that was marketing. And on top of that, how much do you want to make a year, right? And so then you need to take all those expenses plus, and this is the cost of doing business scenario. So here's the follow-up to what Todd's saying. But if you don't have a computer to edit photos, then again, you're not experienced enough to go into business. But you know what? That doesn't stop anyone, Todd. And that's kind of that conversation of, people who are in business. I think the best business plan is to spend years working for someone else part-time as a photographer until you make enough to go full-time. I did that for 7 years. Todd, I totally agree with you. Being an assistant, having a mentor, being shown, the best method, how to deal with clients, the whole process. I'm totally on board with you. with your statement there. However, that's not what people always do. And so sometimes people ask, again, that was just the question to me in this situation. How do I get money? And maybe they want to upgrade. Maybe they have, sake of argument, it's very common. Maybe they have an older Rebel and they want to upgrade. They want better lenses, very expensive quality lenses. So, again, a lot of people who have some basic equipment, they go out there, they make a few bucks, and then they say, wow, I can make a living at this. So how do I do that? Well, I probably need money to upgrade my equipment and upgrade everything to the professional quote level. But yes, that is that. And chances are, again, as I mentioned before, friends and family probably the way. But I'm totally on board with you. The average salary of the photographer, yes, absolutely. People need to really ask them how much overhead. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. People need to really ask them how much overhead they can afford their first year. And I would say very little. You're absolutely correct. Yeah. Again, Todd, doesn't stop anyone. And I totally agree. And I mentioned that in my Pricing for Photographers article, just how much it is, and that the average is $35 at $35,000 a year, which is $17 an hour. And a lot of times people come into the photography business with the hourly mentality, which is, this topic of the starting point of this show. And they say, well, why should I be charging more than $25, $50 an hour? That's crazy. $100 an hour. How can people charge $100 an hour? But they forget they don't work 40 hours a week. It's not $100 an hour at 40 hours a week until maybe you're much more established down the road. But you come into this whole thing with this weekly paycheck mentality, not remembering all of the things that are involved in growing your photography business. Great statements. Great. I think ultimately, Todd, we're on the same page with this. But there are a lot of questions that I get around photography, and sounds like you went a good, solid, traditional route, which, hey, I think you made the right choice doing that, because I'm sure you learned a ton from the people you were working with before you got out on the street. Okay, here's this question kind of matches up. Should I get a second job? Yes. Starting out having a second job, I did. I had some second jobs. When I started out as a photographer. I worked in a furniture store. I certainly did other types of freelance jobs. I did all sorts of things till I was able to survive. But I was also involved in professional photography organizations at the time too. So I knew where I had to aim. And so my prices may have been a little low for as many out of college photographers are. I mean, it just kind of seems to be natural. I don't recommend it. I try to push them towards the highest they were willing to charge, but I knew where I had to be, and it didn't take long for me to get where I needed to go in terms of my pricing as well, and also my marketing to get the job. Of course, this was the 90s too. Okay, last question. I'm having trouble getting paid. Any suggestions? Well, you can always ask for your hard expenses down. If you're a wedding photographer, certainly money down to reserve a date. Commercial photography, a little harder, but not always impossible. But if you have hard expenses, you can certainly ask for those up front. Say, look, whatever the case, I still have to pay these models. I need to pay for the location and so forth. So you could ask for that up front. And that's worked out before. I've seen that happen many, many times. One of the things I often recommend is that you have an admin fee. And that admin fee is, say, for example, you put $100 in there, $250 as an admin fee. Maybe it's just a percentage of the overall. And that admin fee, if they pay within 30 days, they can take that admin fee off. And so that is something that I've seen done, and have done in the past, especially if you're unsure about the client. You let them know in advance. You can't just pile that on, but make sure to be clear. You can take this off if you pay within 30 days. And that helps to improve that cash flow a little bit. Not everybody does that. Sometimes they end up paying the admin fee in 60, 90 days. But knowing and asking the question, how long? I mean, some companies are automatic 60 days or 90 days even. Ask the question, especially if it's a company, ahead of time, and then you can better understand your cash flow going forward and not as many surprises. Again, being able to plan. I don't mind a company who pays 60 days as long as I know it and they do pay on 60 days. And you can even put that admin fee for after 60 days. That's up to you. But you're not a bank, and nor if you have to go after that money, now you're spending your time going after that money, and that's what that admin fee will cover. All right, that's it. That's it for this show. Catch me every Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time. Monday is the marketing show, and you can catch that Rosh.video. We'll take you to the marketing show and price photography. I have two. I have pricing photos, price photos, and price photography. Both of those take you one to the calculator and one to this show. So, and I keep forgetting which is which. Oh dear. Anyway, thank you, Todd. Thank you so much for your great questions and input as part of this show. It's always helpful when we have somebody, kind of either challenge the question or ask questions or share your experience. That I think all three of those were part of your conversation. Strong as we possibly can. But we got to do that together, and we need to do that with good communication. Have a great day.